The framework, we could hear them running up and down in the wall cavities. Sometimes they were fighting, they would keep us awake. Everything that they touched, everywhere they moved around, any surface they ran over, they left a build-up of dung.
We took all the things like the ceiling fans and the air conditioner ducts and everything out, and we cut cement sheeting and we put over all those ducts just to keep the mice out of the house. We even had to keep the plug in the bath with a brick on top of it because we had some come up through the sewerage.
And the mice turn everyday mundane tasks into nightmares.
But if you wanted to mow the lawn even, for example, you had to pull the lawnmower to bits and get the mice out of the fan, the cooling system, and you'd have to mend the wiring that they'd chewed through just to mow your lawn.
The ravenous invaders only want one thing: to eat. Mice consume about 15% of their body weight each day, and these mice strip all the grain from the fields. Then they set their sights on the pig nursery, where sows are nursing their piglets.
It was terrible for the pigs. Just at night you could hear the pigs screaming as the mice were just obviously eating them alive. The next day you'd be able to see it, just huge wounds on their body where they'd been eaten.
It isn't just the Berlin family that's affected. The mouse plague sweeps through 3 Australian states, an area the size of Texas.
In towns, they had to close schools. Mice were running all through the classrooms. There was mouse urine all over the desks, all over the children's books. It was a health problem.
Dr. Ron Sinclair, a senior research officer for the state of South Australia, says the plague was caused by a freakishly long breeding season and a conservation program that backfired. The autumn before, the farmers didn't till the soil, which left mouse holes intact, as well as stubble and seed for the remaining mice to feed on.
The mice have protection from weather, and they have a food source. They're also protected from predators because there's a stubble there.
As winter approaches, the mice burrow deep into the fields, and since food is plentiful, they continue to breed, up to 50 mice in a burrow, and hundreds of burrows an acre. When springtime arrives, the hordes spill out, hunting for food, at the rate of about 3 million mice per square mile.
We had lots of paddocks like this with lots of stubble left behind, and the farmers couldn't see the mice there. The runways weren't obvious, the mouse holes weren't obvious, and so the problem grew and grew, and the mice numbers just built up and spread out right across the whole countryside.
Back on the farm, the Berlin family has been battling to keep their pigs and the other livestock safe from the rodents for months.
We just had a really, really bad day. You know, one by one, we just all started crying. And there was no argument, nothing was said, but it was just the despair of it all.
Everyone was just overwhelmed and exhausted and had enough, frustrated, just ready for it to end.
We're past the anger stage. It's just gone on for too long. It's just now desperation. We don't even know whether we should just be leaving.
Eventually, the mice run out of food. They eat the electrical wiring in the buildings and machinery. And then, horrifyingly, they turn on themselves.
The mice got to the point whereby they started to cannibalise one another.
It's truly shocking, but a definite sign the end is near. Rob's daughter Catherine notices a change.
I remember seeing that the mice numbers were sort of starting to reduce, and then they seemed to, drop off very, very quickly.
Over a space of a week or so, we went from huge numbers to hardly seeing a mouse to seeing nothing.
Suddenly, the mice vanish. But the farm is in ruins, and the poor pigs have been decimated. Out of 1,000 pigs and piglets, the family is left with just 300.
These areas here is where our sows were just being eaten alive. It was a really, really incredibly stressful time.
Rob still gets emotional when he thinks about that gut-wrenching time. And about his pigs.
Just remembering it, it was really shocking. You just see your animals going through such a lot of stress, and your family, If you came down here at night time, you know, the animals would be laying down, like our pigs would be laying down, and they'd be just smothered with mice. And as soon as we came into the sheds here and made a noise, they'd scamper, and the mice would leave the animals and they'd try to go back underneath the floors and, you know, wherever they could go to hide. And you'd have them sometimes where along the walls where they're trying to get out and get down into under the floor, they would be 6 or 8 inches deep. It's really, really hard for people to believe, but, you know, you had to be here to see it.
But he and his family are thankful. They still have each other, and they're still farming. Not even 1 million mice could stop that.
I think we're very lucky in the fact that we're a very tight, close family. I think that bond certainly helped us survive.
Terror in the air as a plane's engine suddenly dies.
I don't know if I'm going to make that airport.
Those are Eugenia Singer's last words before her plane crashes. And she's not alone. Also on board, her beloved dog, Kira.
You're in a deserted area which is swampy, and you just don't know what's going to happen next.
Kira, a golden retriever Labrador mix, was Eugenia Singer's shadow.
Definitely Eugenia's dog. There is no question about it. And those two bonded immediately.
Burton Singer says the lovable yearling went everywhere his wife went, including up in the air.
She just laid in the back, and it was never any interference.
One October day, Eugenia and her furry sidekick take off to St. Simon's Island, Georgia, where the Singers have a vacation home. The two are almost there when tragedy strikes. Their plane goes down in a grassy marsh.
I knew it was a critical situation.
The United States Coast Guard is alerted, and a rescue team immediately launches into action.
They basically told us that we had one aircraft down approximately 18 nautical miles southeast of Hunter Army Airfield.
Somewhere here off in Brunswick.
Aircraft Commander Mark Upson and his team board a helo and head out to Eugenia's last known coordinates.
We had no idea what we were going to come up to. I was expecting to find pieces of wreckage strewn over a half mile or so of marsh.
The officers have to act fast. If the crash hasn't killed them, hungry predators lurking in the marsh just might.
Tons of alligators and water moccasins.
What they find is a welcome surprise.
Seeing a pilot standing in front of the plane with their dog, I was shocked. She crash landed that aircraft into the marsh with absolutely no damage that I could tell to the aircraft whatsoever.
Eugenia and Kira are alive, but they're not out of danger.
The dog seemed pretty traumatized and shaking.
The water whipped up by the chopper is pounding Eugenia and Kira.
When you're in the water, it hurts.
I knew that it was going to be somewhat of a difficult rescue. We don't know how the dog is going to react to us. Don't know how the dog's going to react to the helicopter.
They're about to find out. John Holberg, the rescue swimmer, dives out of the chopper and makes his way to Eugenia and Kira. One of these metal rescue baskets is also lowered to bring the pair up. But the commotion spooks Kira.
Kira just wanted to run away. She was just a scared dog.
John's worried and her panic. The dog may jump out of the basket or worse, push Eugenia underwater. He makes a difficult call.
I told her that if she couldn't hold on to her dog, I was going to have to come back for the dog later, and she understood the seriousness of it.
I was really afraid that we were going to have to leave Kira behind.
It got frantic. She was drowning.
her owner, and it was really hard to keep the dog inside the basket.
Eugenia is lying flat in the basket holding onto Kira's collar, but the 50-pound dog is on top of her and fighting to get free. The weight of the struggling dog is now pushing the basket and Eugenia deeper and deeper underwater.
I'm trying to keep the survivor's head above water.
I could see Miss Singer gasping for air in between waves.
Flight mechanic Adam Morehouse is inside the chopper praying Eugenia can hang on to Kira.
Get that dog, John. There you go.
Finally, the hoist starts to move.
Sorry, take the load. Taking the load.
They have to make 30 feet to reach the chopper.
Kira started to freak out and was trying to get away from the situation.
I was afraid that the dog might leap out.
Miss Singer was holding on to her. She had a death grip on her, and you could see the white off of her knuckles holding on to the dog.
Rescuers know a fall from this height could be deadly.
Woman and the dog are clear of the water.
Miss Singer's feet were sticking out, and she had Kira on her chest and was holding her down so that way the dog wouldn't move.
This isn't standard procedure for hoisting victims, but it may be their only shot.
The woman and the dog are just underneath the aircraft. Still bringing them up.
Thankfully, it works.
Bringing them in. Roger. Bringing the woman and the dog inside the cabin.
When I saw the basket get brought into the cabin of the helicopter and the survivor still had her dog, so I was very relieved.
They stay in the basket as it's safely positioned in the chopper. Amazingly, neither are injured.
I would have been absolutely devastated.
Throughout the harrowing rescue, it was Kira Eugenia says she was most worried about.
She's such an important part of my life, one of my best friends.
Despite knowing her plane was going down, Eugenia managed to keep a level head.
It's a pretty scary situation up there with no fuel, a dog in the back seat, and water underneath. I was in contact with ATC, and I called them and said I was losing power. And could they give me a directional steer to the nearest airport or someplace where I could land? I would have been happy to land on the ground, even if it was a beach, rather than going into the water. And he gave me a steer to a Army Air Force base that was 10 miles away. 10 miles doesn't sound like much, but it is when you don't have an engine. And I saw a line of trees, and I wondered, if I made it, what would I be landing on? Because I couldn't see what was behind the trees. And I figured the best thing to do would be just to land in the marsh. Picked a seagrassy area and landed just like I would have landed the plane on the runway, with the tail down, nose up, just sort of belly flopped onto the marsh. The tail hit first, and then the nose came down very quickly thereafter. I opened the door, the dog jumped out, and I jumped out after her.
Today, 6 months after her crash, Eugenia and Kira drop by to say thank you to the officers who saved their lives.
Last time I saw her, she was very scared.
Wasn't she?
Oh, man.
Oh, man, she was shaking. In that helicopter, I mean, she had me shaking.
It was a pleasure being able to pick you up.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Take care.
And while Eugenia was giving out hugs, Kira had her own special way of saying thank you.